Good morning and welcome to SIRA. We're a growing community of women leaders who are here to learn, rise, and flow together. Thank you for joining us this Saturday morning. I know it's early. We're so glad, you're joining us, for our first session of SIRA Talks. And we're starting this topic, which I think is often left unspoken, even though it touches so many of us. The legal basics every Indian woman, should know. Now, you might wonder why this topic, especially why now? Here's the truth. I think most women in India are never formally taught about, their legal rights. At least I never, learned it, right? Not at school, definitely not in college. At work, I didn't work in India, so I never really learned that there. Maybe things have changed here. And because of that, many women go through life not knowing that the law probably, in most cases, is actually on their side. They may experience harassment, emotional abuse, unfair pay, or denial of property, and not realize that they're protected under the law. But the problem isn't just what happens to us. The real confusion, I think, is silence. The confusion, the idea that this is just how things are, and why something does go wrong. Many women don't know where to start or who to turn to. That's what we're going to talk about today. Really not to sort of challenge the system, not to change things overnight. It's really, I think, to bring awareness, to start the conversation, to really, I think, be informed, maybe more prepared. Hopefully that'll give us a little bit more confidence when, when we really need the law on our side. Because, maybe this is not even it's not like our story, right? We might not even be in those specific circumstances. It might be for our daughter, our friend, our sister, or someone we know at work that might need it. And when women are aware of their rights, they not only protect themselves but become I think they become powerful allies. And this is really also to be able to support others. So thank you all for showing up. Really, appreciate that.
Hi, everyone. SIRA grew from a very inspiring idea to create a safe, nurturing circle where women can learn, grow, and lead with confidence. Whether you're navigating your career, marriage, or motherhood, or just here to know about your rights, this is the space for you.
Thank you, Deepa.
Yeah.
I am Rashmi Chanduraj. After 25 years in corporate and then consulting, I made a decision to step into entrepreneurship, really to, be more present, for my family, and in a way to channel my skills into something which has a deeper impact. I'm truly grateful for what life has bestowed upon me, the lessons, the wins, the setbacks, all of it. But I've also realized that if I know more, if I'd known more, way ahead, probably had access to some of the knowledge that I've gained later on, I probably would have been further ahead. That's why actually SIRA was born. This is not just a community. This is a space for women to come together, to share, to learn, and to grow, where we are able to empower not just ourselves, but also others.
Yeah, thanks, Rashmi. I'm Deepa, a graphic designer for the past 27 years. Just like how Rashmi said, I recently got to learn about investments and managing finances, uh, which I wish I knew earlier, with proper guidance. That got me thinking that what if there was access for women for knowledge, mentorship, and a supportive space to grow. That is what led me to co-found this SIRA along with Rashmi. a space where women can, empower themselves and others, like she said, by learning, sharing, and community. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. We're really excited about, our initiative. So, but, before we dive in, I wanted to kind of just, begin that with a disclaimer, just like, anywhere else, given that this is also, a legal session. The session is only for information. It's meant to bring awareness, so you can seek legal guidance, as it's needed. We're not offering legal advice or reviewing any individual cases, so don't post anything in, the chat, and also not soliciting work. That said, I actually wanted to introduce our guest speaker today, Advocate Shalini John. She is a distinguished legal professional with over 25 years of experience in civil litigation. She's a co-founder and partner at Juris Consult Advocates, with a practice that spans over, I think the High Court of Karnataka to city civil courts, family courts, consumer forums, and arbitration. She's not just a strong and smart, lawyer in the courtroom. She's also worked hard to make sure women's rights are, women are basically treated fairly and, safely in a workplace. She's also co-drafted the institutional policies on sexual harassment prevention. She serves on the International Complaints Committee at, Maharishi Lakshmi Amani College of Women under the POSH Act of 2013. Shalini's leadership also extends to her time and co-opted member of the United Theological College Society. She's helped build the framework, promote dignity and fairness and safety in academic and, professional settings. What I truly love and admire is that she believes deeply in mentoring young women in law and is, a and basically has like a, a voice to the many women who have challenges with like marriage, maternity, mobility, and being able to support and build those systems for women and stay who can stay and kind of succeed in their careers. I think that's such a noble thing. Today she joins us not just as a legal expert, but also someone who's deeply committed to making the law accessible, inclusive, and empowering for every woman. Shalini, we are truly honored to have you here. Would you like to say a few words before we kind of dive in?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rashmi. I'm very happy to be part of this entire initiative. There are very few platforms which actually give access to women from any class or from any spectrum of society. And because of the need of such platforms, many women remain unaware of their rights. So I'm very happy to be a part of this. And I'm glad that you'll have chosen, legal rights or an overview of legal rights for women as your first topic. I realize SIRA Talks has started off as an initiative with this in mind, to be constructive, to be a support group for women. And I'm glad that you'll have chosen this topic as your takeoff pad, basically. And I'm very grateful to both of you to have not only started this, but also to have invited me to be a part of it. Just to have a quick introduction, I don't have to say more than what you've already said. I've been practicing in Bangalore for the last 25 years. So my husband and I, we run our firm. And having been in litigation over the last 2 decades, we have a very good overview of how the legal system works and how it impacts everyone, not just women, everyone, but in particular women. So having been in litigation and having had the opportunity of meeting clients who come from different strata of society, it actually opens not just my eyes. I mean, our eyes have to be open and we are learning constantly. So it gives us a very good platform to be speakers and, give information out to provide information to others on where they stand when it comes to the law and what they need to do and what they do not have to fear, because law is always associated with fear and difficulty, which it normally is procedure-wise in India, but this is more to just give you advice and to tell you that you have rights and you don't have to be fearful of exercising them. So I'm very happy to be here.
Thanks, Shalu. I mean, we're truly honored for you to be here. And, you know, I've experienced in the past, you're so clear in your communication and you put it across so well that people can understand it so easily. And that too such a complicated subject, you know. Our effort today is to sort of bridge the gap between what the law says and how women actually experience it. So the session is just an overview today for women to understand their legal rights and also to clear some of the most common misconceptions that they have about their rights. So to start off with, I would ask you this question, that many women don't realize they have legal protection until they come into a difficult situation. In your experience, what are some of the key rights every woman should be aware of?
You said it right, Deepa, because it's not just unique to women, it's unique to everyone. Nobody wants to go and scratch that wound unless it's required. So no one goes to a lawyer unless it's actually required. So they don't want to go find out what their legal rights are until they're pushed to that situation. The most basic rights women need to know is their rights when it comes to, their assets, their properties, what they have got or acquired by their own skill, by their own earnings, what they've inherited from their parents, what they're entitled to in marriage in the event their marriage is, not on strong grounds, their rights on children, what they need to do when they have properties, including how they need to manage properties. They don't have to wait till, they're old or they're infirm, making wills, because wills are considered taboo most times. It somehow is like an omen of something to come. So nobody wants to touch and go and meet a lawyer to make a will. There are so many aspects of workplace requirements, harassment in the workplace. What are your rights as an employee? What are your rights as an employer, if you're a woman especially? All of these things, these are basic rights that women need to know and need to be aware of.
Right. So, Shalini, there's often a fear of this legal process being complicated, time consuming, expensive. What would you say to someone who hesitates to seek legal help just because it's not worth their time?
It becomes worth your time if the right you're seeking to enforce is very important to you. So if it means you've been pushed to a corner, I'll give you examples. Like, for example, if your marriage is broken and you're hoping to find out where you stand, what are your rights? If you have to go in for a divorce, you have to file a divorce proceedings. What are your rights on your child's custody, on the questions of guardianship? And you've reached a point where nothing can be done in the marriage, then you have to seek legal guidance. You cannot, be by yourself and think that you figured out what you need to do, because there are a lot of people around you who will give you advice that is not complete. Many people offer advice because they've been in a similar situation. So they'll base it on their facts and they'll give you advice based on their case, not yours. So you keep getting information from different pockets and you will land up with an assessment that is completely wrong or,
Right.
just completely off target. So there are certain situations where you need to get legal advice. I will not be able to tell you when that is for each one, but you will know when it comes to most common saying, push comes to shove, you have to get legal advice. There is no turning away from that. And at that instance, we are, at least in Bangalore, we are blessed with several lawyers, law firms that are extremely competent and well reputed. And since we are connected by the internet, all you need to do is get on the internet, do a search, do a review, find good lawyers, ask people, get
Right.
references, people whom you trust, because then you get trusted references. Go meet with legal consultants or advocates and get advice. So there are certain times when you are in doubt, you still have time because you need to assess that situation. Or you
Right.
have a situation where, either your parent has passed away, you need to figure out now how the property of your parents has to transfer legally into your names. You can't sit on it for years and years. At that point, you need to move. So
Right.
there are certain situations in your life when you actually have to take that step and meet with a lawyer, as against keeping it on the back seat and saying, I'll review it at a later point. So these instances, you need to go and meet with a lawyer. If you are in a situation where you're considering something in a few years to come or a few months, then yes, you can discuss it with family and all of that. But there are certain situations which are trigger situations. You need to go meet with lawyers immediately. And that's when you either speak to people, get references, find out, and go to good lawyers. And when you meet with lawyers, you need to use your sense of judgment to figure out whether that lawyer is good for you. Take their advice and
Mm.
follow it.
Right. So while legal process is so intimidating, you can meet them and just have a consultation. Is that possible? I mean,
That's
without actually going through the legal process itself, that you sit
yes.
and just discuss and assess your, situation.
Yes, because then the lawyer or the legal consultant will tell you what needs to be done next,
Right.
whether you go to court or whether it can be done with the help of the lawyer themselves from their chambers, whether it's supposed to be an issuance of a notice. There are certain precursors to going to court. There are certain things that don't require court at all, but you need the help
Right.
of an advocate. So even if you're checking on property, if you're buying property, there are many things where you don't have to actually go to court. So the first
Right.
step to go and meet with a lawyer. Then a lot
Right.
of your doubts are cleared, and then the path forward is made clearer to you. Whether you need
Right.
to plunge into a court proceeding or you need to do other things much before that, or no court
Okay.
at that matter.
Okay. So what are the actual challenges women experience when it comes to legal access?
Uh, the challenges I see, at least there are practical challenges. There are many women who, because of their situation, like, let me give you an example. There are several women who've been married from very young, who've never worked in their lives, who've been homemakers, who depended on their husbands or their male family members for all decision making. So for them to kind of break out of the shell, find themselves lawyers or legal consultants, and to come out of their safety zone and take a step for themselves, that itself is a challenge. That we see very often, because they then, what many women do in such situations is they send out their parents or they send some friends to go discuss with lawyers to find out what needs to be done, because firstly, either they're not in a situation where they can leave home and come and meet with a lawyer, or two, they're so scared that they don't want to do it themselves, so they do it in a
Right.
safer, in a manner that they feel is safe for them. So
Right.
those are challenges. The other is, of course, financial. If you don't have your own source of income, you don't know how you're going to fund your entire legal battle, or your the process of meeting with a lawyer or paying for their consultation. So one is financial, of course. The
Yes.
other is, of course, their background. Third is just ignorance. They don't
Yeah.
know what to do.
Any better. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't know. Either they don't know they have to go meet with a lawyer, or they don't know that they have a right to exercise and enforce. So these are the challenges that we see very, very often.
So
So it's
this session is going to throw some light on at least the ignorance part of it, So
Yeah.
over to you, Rashmi.
Yeah, actually, there's a question here from the audience where they're talking about what if, fear is stopping you? And I think that's quite common for, for a lot of women, right? Where it can be fear, like you talked about, fear of that sort of unknown, or they don't know any better. I don't know if you had any advice for what women can do there, but
Yes.
Let's not get into the answering of it, Shalini, just now. We'll come back to it. We'll save that, because I think that's really powerful. And we definitely want to, get to that in a little bit. But I think it's a good segue from, this conversation to, I think what affects all of us, or so many of us, right? The workplace. I'll be honest, I've never worked, full time as an employee in India. I've actually, definitely wondered, like, especially with so many, multinational companies that have come in, flexible sort of work options becoming more prevalent now. I'm sure like the professional sort of landscape has changed, right? For women at least. What I'm wondering, Shalini, is, are workplaces truly like safer? Is it sort of built around, like a support system for women?
It has become safer over the years. Not that it's the safest place, but it's certainly, when you compare it to a few years back, they're far more safer. One, because girls and women are far more aware of their rights, especially working women. And also because of the framework of work, the legal framework has changed. So we do have a statute now, which everyone knows is the common name for it is the POSH Act, which is the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, Prevention, Prohibition, and Redressal Act of 2013. So that, in a way, kind of codified all of the laws that are required, or procedures, legal procedures that need to be put in place to ensure, firstly, that a workplace is safe for women, so that they don't have to give up on their careers, or their dreams, only because they don't feel safe at work. And also to come up with guidelines how to make it safe and to prohibit and prevent this harassment at workplace, whatever form of harassment. Prior to the POSH Act coming into place, we did not have any legal framework in place. So I don't know how many of how that prior to the POSH Act coming up in 2013, it took a very brutal incident in Rajasthan of a social worker being attacked while doing her work, for a public interest litigation being filed, and that became known as the Vishaka Guidelines, because one of the petitioners' names was Vishaka. So the Supreme Court actually sat down and framed guidelines of what needs to be done to ensure women are safe at their workplace, and how to prevent acts of sexual harassment against women when they're at their workplace, whatever may be the workplace, starting from domestic help right down to going to corporate heads. Any place is a workplace, and women are people who are doing work for their own livelihoods. So they framed a lot of the guidelines, which now become part of the POSH Act. The POSH Act actually sits and rides on the Vishaka Guidelines that came up in 1997. So that is one of the reasons why women actually feel a lot more empowered after the POSH Act has come into place. It has its pros and cons. It has been misused, but by far it is a very significant and a very, very beneficial legislation for women, and it has empowered women immensely.
That's so good to know. When you talk about harassment, does it actually protect sort of the obvious forms, like being excluded, or inappropriate messages, and just being sort of underpaid? Does it actually protect against all of those different things, or does that fall under harassment?
See, sexual harassment in the POSH Act is very, very wide. So it brings within its ambit every form of act, conduct, even gesture that brings down a woman's dignity. So, and in connection to that, so it could just, including what you said, getting offensive emails, getting offensive WhatsApp messages, talking to you in a derogatory manner, using insults, abuses, or using words, slang words that actually are not fit to be used with anyone, let alone women. And as a consequence of conduct of someone else in your office, or even your supervisor or your manager, if you show your dissent or you object, And then you realize you've been brought down, humiliated, or you're being looked, you overlooked for a promotion, or your reviews are not going your way because you showed your objection. All of that constitutes sexual harassment.
Gotcha. And that's interesting. What if workplace, doesn't really follow like a posh guideline or doesn't have like a committee in place? Like what happens to those women? Can you walk us through what, legal recourse they have?
Yeah, certainly. So the POSH Act has provisions where it becomes mandatory for every employer to have an internal complaints committee. Sometimes if there are very few people, they're exempt. If you have just 5 people in your office, obviously it's hard to build a internal complaints committee. Then you go to the district local complaints committee. So the government has a local complaints committee that does the same work of an internal complaints committee, and that serves the needs of women who work either in a domestic environment or in a very small workplace where there is not sufficient number of employees, so there's no ICC in their own workplace. So they go to the district level local complaints committee. In the event that an employer who is mandatorily required to have an internal complaints committee does not do what it needs to do, then you can complain to the district officer. There are provisions in the act where you go to these government nodal places, you lodge a complaint, and that complaint is followed through because there will be an inquiry. They start with fines, which is about 50,000. And if it's repeat after that, you're allowed to double that fine. And eventually the government has the right, or rather the competent authority under the act has the right to initiate proceedings where they can think of taking back the license or registration of the employer, whatever form it may be. That's the complete dire. Now, I don't know in how many cases they followed through, but at least the act provides for it. And if you do work in a place where you don't have an internal complaints committee, you can start the ball rolling by writing to your employer saying, listen, you need to get this in place, failing which you're going to be in obvious violation of a law. And this can become very difficult for you. So you can start the process by, initiated by writing a letter, putting it on record that the employer does not have it in place and that you intend to see that they follow through with it.
Yeah. Do you advise, women to actually reach out to getting legal advice before they kind of, go to a ICC or, an internal committee?
Yeah, I suppose you're speaking in the background of them having faced some kind of harassment, right? Yeah. It probably makes a lot of sense if you meet with a lawyer. But I know that it has both its pros and cons, because sometimes getting lawyers in too early may complicate it, because lawyers may tend to give you so much information that you're not ready to take. But in a wide sense, yes, because you go to a good lawyer who's done domestic, violence or harassment cases, or even not just a lawyer, even if you go to maybe these NGOs that deal with, there are several NGOs that actually deal with sexual harassment complaints and all of that, just for advice. Tell them what kind of harassment you faced and what do they think in their experience needs to be done. How does the woman want to or needs to deal with this complaint? What does she have to do? Get a little advice so that when you start the process, you're not completely ignorant of how you're supposed to do it and what could be the possible outcome of it. So maybe it does help to speak to someone who's been in that role before of giving advice.
That makes sense, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of, evidence that you probably will have to collect if, it is seriously a harassment case. But, anyways, the last question here, which, I don't know how much of this actually is, it's available, for women in India, equal pay. Talk to us about, just the pay parity that exists, which I know women are probably paid like, I think a recent stats that I read was about 38% less than any other male counterpart for the same, kind of work that they do. What's sort of the recourse that women have, in India when they see something like that?
Um, See, India does not have any laws on equal pay per se. We have a lot of service laws and labor laws that ensure that your right as an employee when it comes to your work is governed, and you can't be thrown out of work without due process or without a good reason. But when it comes to equal pay, when you have to look at companies, corporate structures, you have contracts in place, employment contracts in place that you sign. So you know what your remuneration is, what your pay package is. You've agreed upon it, you've signed off on it. So you're completely governed by your contract. So um, pay per se is always governed by contract. So to a great extent, if you've agreed to it, and you have your reviews after 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is that your contract says, what are your the perks that you get, what commissions you get, everything is written into that contract. So there's very little leg space for you to fight over unless you're not given what you're supposed to get in the contract.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That's great. Thank you. Deepa, I think next is, property and, inheritance. Again, a very interesting topic to get into. So I'll let you lead the way.
Right. Let's address this topic then. Property and inheritance rights are still widely misunderstood, especially when it comes to daughters or married women. Can you break down the law, and throw some light on what the rights are about?
Yeah. So when it comes to property laws, one of the biggest misconceptions people have in general is the fact that we don't have a common property law or inheritance law in India. So how we inherit properties is based on which religion we follow, either by birth or by choice. And so in India, we have the obvious, the breakdown of on religious lines. We have Hindus, we have Muslims, we have Christians, Parsis. So each religious set is governed by a particular personal law. So for Hindus, we have the Hindu, Succession Act. How you succeed to property, how you inherit property is also based on whether, very specifically to Hindus, we have the concept of ancestral properties and self-acquired properties that is not common to people from other faiths. So most often the misconception is when people talk without legal advice, you will have a Hindu woman or a Christian woman talking to a Hindu friend and assuming that she has ancestral rights over her father's property when Christians don't have those ancestral rights. So those are the several misconceptions when clients come to us and actually they tell us, okay, for example, a Christian lady comes and says, I have ancestral rights, so by birth I have a right over it. So my father or mother could not have, executed a will and given the property away to my other siblings. So therein lies the requirement of knowing what laws are relevant to you. How you,
Right.
yeah. So Hindus have the concept of ancestral properties as because of your question. Um, Whether you succeed to ancestral property. Now, of course, everyone is aware that girls have been brought to parity with boys when it comes to ancestral properties. That right was not available before 2005. But now you stand in the same footing as your brother when it comes to getting a share of your grandfather, great grandfather's properties that have fallen into the share of your father. You have a right to seek for that or your share of it. But once you get the share, a girl is not dictated by law in the same way as a boy. So there are several concepts in property succession that you need to meet with a lawyer so that you get a complete understanding of where you stand.
Right. So that is about inheritance. What about your own property? How can you pass it on to whoever, she wants?
Yeah. Yeah.
And is there any legal restrictions on that?
Okay. So for women per se, again, you have the concept of Stridan for Hindu women, which is what they get as a result of marriage, which becomes their own. No one can touch it. So for women in Hindu women, you have the concept of stridhan. You also have you have your own earnings by which you buy property, which are your own. Now you have every right to, in your lifetime, either dispose of these properties, you can sell them, you can lease out your apartments, your houses, you can enjoy the, the rentals from it because you're the sole owner. And you have the legal competence and the right to execute and write a will by which you say, I want this property to go to A, B, and C. It need not be family. It could be anyone you choose. But you have to ensure that you've met with a lawyer and made your will in a manner that law perceives as being correct, valid and legal and genuine. So because a will comes into effect only after you're gone. So in many ways, you speak from the grave. You're speaking through your will after you're no longer there. So it is your responsibility to ensure that you've made your will completely watertight. You followed all the legal guidelines that have been given in, we have the laws such as the Indian Succession Act, which specifically speak of wills for all religious people from all religious backgrounds. So the procedures for making a will are written so clearly in the Indian Succession Act. Obviously, it's difficult for a layperson to understand, but any competent lawyer will see you through that. Make sure you write a will in the manner you're supposed to. You have to write it. You have to ensure that you've got witnesses who are majors, who are also mentally competent, who have seen you sign that will. They sign in your presence. And if you can register wills, though registration of wills is not mandatory, but most people register it just to ensure that at least the signing of the will has been done in the presence of, an authority that's set in by the government. So that portion is taken care of, but registrations are not mandatory. But ensure that you've made a will with the help of a lawyer so that it stands the test of any legal scrutiny. So every woman has a right to make a will and to dispose of her property after her death to whomever she wants. But during her lifetime, a woman has complete legal rights and competence to ensure that her own properties that she has got from her own earnings or her stridhan. Stridhan is a concept very specific to women, but any other gifts that any woman may have got, which is her own, she has every right to deal with it during her lifetime. But properties that you hold along with your siblings because you've inherited from your parents and which you've not yet sold or you've not yet partitioned. Now, that property you can't deal with by yourself because obviously you're a co-owner with your brothers or your sisters or other family members. So you can't just freely go and say, I'll dispose of my 1/2 share or my 1/4 share because the property stands as a whole. So you cannot, not that you can't go and sell your 1/4 share, but the buyer does not know which part of that property is his 1/4 share or her 1/4 share. So when it comes to commonly held property, there may be a lot more legal complexities that are involved. So you need to meet with a lawyer before you even think of selling property that you hold in common with other family members. But your own property you can deal with.
Yeah. When you're inheriting, if there is no will written by, your parents or, your husband, how does that work out for a woman?
Okay. So irrespective of the gender, we are governed by succession laws in India. So as you rightly asked, if you don't have a will that has been written by your parents for their self-acquired property, then law determines who the legal heirs of your parents are. So everything is already set in stone. So you have the Hindu Succession Act, which clearly states who are the legal heirs. So there are legal heirs in different levels. You have the class 1 legal heirs, class 2 legal heirs, class 3. Class 1 legal heirs are the ones that will take first. All of them who have been mentioned in the class 1, they will all take equally. So I'll give you an example. Now, supposing you have a male Hindu who has passed on and has not executed a will. So then you fall back on law to decide who are his legal heirs who will take his property. So the law provides, the Hindu Succession Act provides that for a male Hindu who has passed on without a will, his class 1 legal heirs will be his mother, his widow, and all of his children. Or if any of his children have died before him, then his children's children. will take the share of that child, son or daughter, who would have taken that share if that son or daughter was alive. So each of these legal heirs in this class 1 will take equally. If any one of them is not there, then the number of people with whom it is shared reduces, but it'll always be the class 1. If there's nobody in that entire class 1, then you fall back to the class 2 heirs, who could be, the father, it could be the sisters and brothers. So the law actually kind of comes down when you follow class 1, class 2, class 3 legal heirs. So you follow those systems of legal heirs to the T. There is no room for interpretation of who the legal heirs are, because the law has provided who the legal heirs are. And they will inherit property in case there is no will. But if there is a will, the will break this legal or the law given hierarchy of who legal heirs are. The will supersede all of that. And the person named in the will take the property as the beneficiary.
So from what I understand, having a will becomes that much more important or clear in how your titles are passed, right?
Yes, there are many aspects to that. One, yes, obviously, because it's your property, you are enforcing your right to say who you want it to go to. So in that aspect, yes. And many times making a will makes it easier in terms of procedures.
Right.
Making a will, if you have only one child, probably won't make such a big difference, because at the end of the day, you're leaving almost everything to that one child, unless, of course, you don't want that child to inherit everything. But many times having a will makes things easier, because you know the mind of the person who's leaving the property.
Right.
But it
Yeah.
also depends, like we've seen as lawyers, we've seen the worst side of families and family disputes. So it's not that once you've made a will, everything will be perfectly fine, because even wills are challenged, because a person left out of the will or given a little less is always unhappy. And sometimes, probably someone closer in terms of relationship is left out, and someone further away in relationship is given. So in such circumstances, the person who's been disregarded in the will is not going to take it lightly. So you'll end up challenging the will in court. So it's not certainly completely, I mean, it's not that everything will go fine, but definitely it's a right that you have as an individual to make a will. It's your right to determine who your property goes to. So to that extent, yes, making a will is of great importance.
Yeah. So here's one question. What steps can a woman take to make sure her property rights are secure, whether she's inheriting, buying, or transferring assets? You've answered pretty much a lot of it, but if there's anything that you've left out.
Okay, let's start, take them one by one. If you want to buy property, the first step is obviously you base it on what is your financial strength, how much you have by yourself, how much you can get as a loan, all of that. The second is, of course, what kind of property you're looking at, whether you want to buy a site, whether you want to buy a built up a building, a commercial or a residential, what are your requirements? Then obviously you send out feelers, you start looking and you get prospective properties that you want to look at, and properties that you are very interested in. The first step that you do before you do anything else is getting the title documents of this property that you want to buy. You get the set of title documents and you meet with a lawyer. This is,
Yeah.
I cannot emphasize enough how important this step is, because many times people, because they are unaware, they assume that because they're taking a loan from a certain bank, ABC bank, and the bank has given an approval of that property, that property is completely safe to purchase. It is not, because banks have their lawyers on panel who have reviewed it, but they want to give you a loan, so they will never say don't buy.
Right.
What you need to do is get independent verification from your lawyer. You have to take the documents, go to your lawyer will review them. He will have follow-up questions, he will have follow-up documents that he will want to check, which you go back to your seller or the developer and you say, my lawyer wants these follow-up documents. Don't hesitate, even if it takes some time. Don't hesitate if The developer or the seller's lawyer has to speak with your lawyer. That is your lawyer's job. He or she, the lawyer, will speak to the buyer, the seller's lawyer, the developer's lawyer. But until such time, of course, no property can be promised to be 100% clear. Very few are. But you have to limit your risk because you're putting in your hard-earned money and buying it. So you have to
Right.
limit the number of legal questions, legal loopholes, legal objections that may come about in the future by going to a lawyer and ascertaining whether, yes, this property is clear to the highest possible extent. And then you venture out paying even an advance. This is one more problem that we see very often. Even before you check your documentation, a huge, like a 15% or a 10% advance is paid. After you've paid it and you realize there is a legal glitch, it is almost impossible to get back that money unless you're dealing with a very honest person. So then, without having bought a property, you've gotten yourself into a legal tangle where you'll probably have to file a case to get back your advance.
Mm.
Even before you pay an advance, and an advance that is substantial. If it's a very small amount, like 10,000 or 15,000, that does not hurt you. Even if you lose out, you're free to do it. But don't pay money. Don't pay money upfront as an advance until you've got the documents cleared, because it's very difficult to get back the advance if the property has a problem.
Yeah. So
This is
this
to do
is
with
like, yeah, that's about buying, right? Yeah,
when you're
you said
inheriting.
about transferring.
Yes, if you're inheriting property from, a parent who's just passed on recently, first things is to gather information of what properties your parents have left behind. Find out from siblings if there is a will. If there is no will, then go meet with a lawyer to find out what steps you need to take. The first most important step is ensuring that you've got the death certificate of your deceased mother or father or whoever it is whose property that you're looking to, because you need a death certificate in place. And the second step is to get the katas transferred. Now, if you're the only legal heir, or if for example, if a father's passed on and he has a wife and two children who have inherited together, the kata for the property needs to be transferred in the names of the legal heirs. So meet with a lawyer or meet with anyone who helps get you. In Bangalore, it's the BBMP kata. So you need to get steps to get the kata transferred in the joint names of all the legal heirs. If all legal heirs are not in Bangalore, then the legal heirs who are abroad can give a no objection affidavit to the one person who is in Bangalore for the kata to be transferred in that one person's name. But keep this in mind, a kata or BBMP kata being transferred in one name does not mean that one person becomes the owner. That person is just got their name in the BBMP records to do the needful, like paying of property taxes, all that. But they hold the property for the benefit of everyone. So you can become owners of property in India only through registered documents or in the manner that's provided in law. So just by getting a kata transferred, you don't become like, for example, if there's a mother, father, and mother and two children who are becoming legal heirs of a deceased father. If the children are abroad and only the mother is in India, the children normally get the katas transferred in the mother's name for whatever practical reasons. Doesn't mean the mother has become the owner of the property. It's just that the property is
Right.
katas in the name of the mother for practical requirements, but law will always say that all three legal heirs are the joint owners. So these little intricacies you need to get clarified. Meet with a lawyer, ask them what needs to be done. If you want to sell the property, how do we sell it? Do we need power of attorneys? My brothers or sisters are abroad. We need to deal with the properties. Do we have to get power of attorneys from do my brothers or sisters who are living outside India have to give us power of attorneys so we can act on their behalf? These are small little steps that you need to take, which if you meet with a lawyer, a lot of it gets clarified. So this is with pertaining to if you succeed in properties, if your parent has left a will, what are the requirements of that will? Do you need to get a probate? In Karnataka, probate is not mandatory, but sometimes we advise clients to get a probate. Sometimes, with example, with movable properties like bank accounts, money is left in bank accounts, shares, share certificates, life insurances, stocks, mutual funds. Many companies ask legal heirs to get succession certificates. Now, succession certificate is actually an order from court which takes about 8 months, 6 to 8 months. So then you need to go to a lawyer. and tell the lawyer I need to file a petition for succession to get myself a succession certificate. So these things, you have to first make an inventory of what are your properties. If there are bank accounts, you go to the bank, you meet with the bank managers, you get details of what steps they want you to do. Once you have those requirements, you meet with a lawyer and find out what's your next step.
Yeah,
So
it
the
sounds
transfer
like quite.
process. Yeah, sorry.
No, I was going to
Yeah.
say, it's obviously quite, I can imagine a tedious process, trying to get it done. Hopefully, getting a will would, mitigate some of that.
Yeah, it does mitigate a lot of it, actually.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I think that, leads us to, the last part of our discussion, before we get into sort of Q&A, is really about, I think this is, probably something that, we all as women, are in some way, connected to, or it means a little bit more, or maybe it's a little bit more personal. When it comes to like marriage, family, and just family life, right? Kids and all of that, including divorce. And what I've learned is, in my conversations with friends, or in my like circle of women, they're all very like strong, confident women, but they're don't realize that they're also going through sort of emotional manipulation. They're going through financial control, knowingly or unknowingly. And I've heard from so many that, even dowry is actually, still sort of prevalent, even after, like years of marriage. I just want to kind of, understand, and also for our audience to understand, are emotional or financial forms of, control legally being recognized as like domestic violence?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because domestic violence as a definition got legal significance when we got the Domestic Violence Act, the Prohibition of Domestic Violence Act in 2005. And the definition of domestic violence brings within its scope every form of domestic harassment, not just the cruelty aspect of where physical harassment, emotional harassment, mental cruelty, speaking, bringing down someone in your family, putting them down, and not providing for them financially. What is their basic necessity? Not giving to them every month, even money that is required for their personal hygiene, personal requirements, things to just help them stand on their feet, not for luxurious lifestyles, but just to have a dignified life. If you've been denied that little bit of financial help when you're not working as a woman, all of these aspects are considered as domestic violence as a definition. So in the Domestic Violence Act, they added all of this: the right to have a house, to have a roof over your head, either as a wife or a daughter, in a family relationship. That is domestic violence. So every aspect of domestic violence was actually kind of codified and given interpretation in the Domestic Violence Act. But just going forward as well, since we're talking about matrimonial issues, every single matrimonial enactment in India, and again, divorce and marriage is governed by the religion we follow in India. We don't have one common law. But what is good about all of our marriage laws, whether it's the Hindu Marriage Act, which governs Hindus, whether it's the Divorce Act that governs Christians, whether it's the Special Marriage Act, which governs spouses or people who have married inter-religion, as we call intercaste in normal parlance, all of these statutes have grounds for divorce, which bring within its purview every form of harassment, similar to what has been defined in the Domestic Violence Act. They have just common words like physical, mental, emotional cruelty. But the ambit is so large because over the last several decades, the courts have interpreted, what cruelty is, to bring within its scope every form of cruelty, because cruelty probably is relative. What probably is cruel to one person may not be cruel. I mean, cruel is, let me say a harsh word, what is emotionally difficult for one person may not be difficult for another. Words that were used 50 years back may not be used now. Situations and lifestyles, what we have now in 2025 was not the same when we were growing up in the 1980s or earlier. So the definition of emotional cruelty and physical cruelty is common and doesn't change. We know what physical violence is, but emotional and mental cruelty, which has a lot more elastic interpretation, changes also with the times and the kind of lifestyle the person who is dealing with it comes from. So all of these, yes, every single aspect of abuse is actually covered in the definition. In the letter of the law, the spirit of the law is in enforcing it in court. So that's entirely another subject, but we have the law in place for all of that.
That's great. That's great. What about, like protection, for like dowry harassment? Is there protection for women in those situations?
Yeah. Yes, we do. Actually, the Dowry Harassment Prevention Act is a law that has been in force for a long time to deal with a social, as a lawyer, I would say a social curse, and which has caused a lot of suffering to several women and their families over the years and over the decades. It's also a double-edged sword where, as a lawyer, I've seen it misused the most. And so it becomes like a tool for women to use to ensure that the husband falls in place in tow for other requirements that come out of divorce, like ensure that you get paid a proper alimonies, otherwise I'll file a dowry harassment case against you. So we've seen that very commonly. The the sad part of it is, because of the number of times this law has been misused, the genuine victims very rarely are looked upon as victims. And there are several victims in India. I mean, women are still victims of dowry. And I get a lot of clients who come, and the first thing they say after the marriage is broken down is, we paid so much dowry. So the first thing we do giving as advice is, it starts with you saying yes to giving dowry. So, because giving dowry itself is a criminal offense, not just taking dowry. But when marriages are fixed, because of the huge cultural baggage that we carry of how we are brought up, and this is irrespective of religion in India, dowry is a problem in all, as in every possible religion. And you give the dowry because otherwise it's not the right thing to do. Unfortunately, if you don't give dowry, it's considered not the right thing. So a lot of dowry is paid, and nowadays marriages are not as steadfast as they were earlier. So you see marriages breaking down, and then the families coming and said, we paid 50 lakhs as dowry and now the marriage is broken. There's very less you can do at that point. You file a dowry harassment claim, you hopefully get the man or the family to go to prison, but that's about it. I mean, and the whole process of going to court in a dowry harassment case, which is a criminal case, is so hard on the woman herself, that you have suffered enough suffering from dowry demands, then your part two of your suffering is in actually fighting the court case. So my advice to everyone on this platform and this program is, please don't say yes to dowry, whether it's for your daughter, whether it's for yourself. You start the process from there so that life becomes easier for you later. Because if you're paying dowry to get yourself a husband, that husband is not worth it. And eventually you figure it out down the line, because you feed that venomous snake, that snake is going to come and ask for more. It's not going to end. And that is what we have seen over the years. So Dowry Harassment Act is there in place. It's a proper criminal case that you go, you meet with lawyers, you file it. But the process is so difficult because it's a criminal case, and it's like a part two of your suffering. So, but if you are in a situation where you are a victim of dowry harassment, you've been sent out of your house because of that, you have a law in place and you can secure your rights. You have to just toughen up and fight it. Meet with a lawyer, grit your teeth, say, I'm going to take it forward and fight the case.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that's, emotionally draining, for the women, and, maybe even immediate family, around her. So let's talk about divorce, next. It's one of those things that, people avoid discussing until I feel like they're in it, or it's fast approaching. They don't realize. Like what are actually the legal grounds, for divorce in India?
Yeah. Just to, if I may just give an introduction to divorce issues, women and I mean people in general, not just women, but since we are specifically speaking to women, when it comes to divorce or broken marriages, however strong you are mentally, emotionally, or however well placed in life, career wise, when marriages break down, it literally hits your soul. So you are knocked off whatever strong ground you're standing on. So most times when we meet clients with broken marriages, they are at their lowest because the causes for divorce are so personal, and they completely take your belief in, in people, it breaks that belief. So when you're in a situation like that and you feel like you need help, please take help. Start with counseling and then meet with lawyers to figure out, as Rashmi asked, what are your legal grounds for divorce? So in India, all of our divorce laws have only two ways of getting a divorce. Now, both husband and wife, one way is both husband and wife decide that no, we are not able to live together. We need to end it amicably. Let's decide what the terms and conditions of our divorce is. Do we have properties we have bought together? How do we share them? Do I give you one? Do you give me one? What are those legal frameworks that have to be followed? If the wife is not working, does the husband pay her an alimony, permanent alimony, or is it going to continue as monthly alimonies? Children, all of those aspects you decide amicably. Who will children stay with? And all of those you put in a mutual consent petition and you file a mutual consent divorce petition. There are no allegations made in a mutual consent. You either have a common lawyer or you both have two different lawyers, but you do the same things and you hopefully get your divorce immediately. We have a 6 months waiting period, which is mandated in all divorce laws. But nowadays, courts are following a Supreme Court decision and asking family courts to consider waiving the 6 months in certain situations. So you can seek and ask the court to waive the 6 months and get your divorce earlier than 6 months. But it's not no one can tell you that you will get the waiver immediately. That is one form of divorce. The other is there is no meeting of minds. There's such a terrible fallout that there is no way you can enter into a mutual consent, at least not at the present moment. So what recourse do you have? You have to fall back on the laws. So you have to then file a contested divorce petition where you actually bring out certain grounds. You cannot just go to court and say, I can't stay with my husband. My marriage is irretrievably broken down. You have to make out certain grounds. And the common grounds are cruelty again being physical, mental, emotional. The other one being desertion, that 2 years prior to you going to court, your husband has deserted you. And desertion need not be just leaving the home and going, but desertion could be constructive. You could be staying in the same house, but not living as husband and wife in every sense of the word. No physical relations, no emotional relations. That could also amount to constructive desertion. The other grounds is adultery in the marriage, that your spouse has had an extramarital affair, or is continuing to have several extramarital affairs. There could be the other grounds for divorce being that your spouse has been missing for at least 7 years, so presumed dead. And there are other things which have, virulent diseases, etc., etc. But the common grounds for divorce are cruelty, desertion, adultery, all of these being common to all of the marriage and divorce legislations. You have to take a ground, assert a ground, and state your facts as to why you are using this ground as a reason for asking the court for a divorce. And you file what is called a contested divorce proceeding. They are time consuming, but that's the only way you will get a divorce if it's not a mutual consent.
How do these differ, in as it applies to like personal law, or religion?
Most of the requirements of the laws are almost common. You go to the same court. So in metropolitan cities like Bangalore, we have family courts. In smaller districts where the population is not very high, you have the district court itself that serves as the court that handles divorce matters. So where you go is common, irrespective of your religion. Hindus are governed by the Hindu Marriage Act, but the grounds for divorce are almost the same. There are just a few probable, things like right on Stridan that is written into the Hindu Marriage Act, which may not be common to in the Divorce Act that governs Christians and Parsis, etc. Muslims are governed. Muslim women have their own Muslim Women's Dissolution of Marriage Act that came into place because they didn't have any right for divorce earlier. Maintenance laws are almost common, irrespective of which religion you follow. So to that extent, the laws are common, and the way courts have interpreted what maintenance should be paid, the requirements for maintenance, your income, whether the wife has an income of her own, what is her lifestyle that she has been used to, what is the husband's income. These principles are common throughout, irrespective of religion. So to a great extent, most of these laws have kind of become homogenized over the years with respect to grounds for divorce, the points that the court will look into for granting maintenance, and even custody and guardianship of minor children. Only because we have a common law in the form of the Guardian and Wards Act, which governs the rights of minor children when it comes to guardianship and custody disputes when marriages break down. So all of these are very, very common. So even though you have different laws by which you go to court, eventually the principles followed by the courts are almost similar.
Sure. Well, thank you, Shalini. I know we've covered like a lot, and I know we've gone over time as well. I do want to keep some time to answer questions, but this was, very, very insightful. I'm going to, let Deepa kind of talk about some of the questions that she has, which are basically resources that I think the audience will appreciate. So Deepa, on to you.
Yeah, thank you, Shalini. That was a fair understanding of all the rights, though we can't deep dive and understand anything like in depth. But given the kind of time we had, I think that's the best we could do. There are a couple of questions on what to do as a wrap up. Once you are in a difficult situation, or you've identified this property disputes or domestic violence or workplace harassment. Where do you go and what do you do? What are the steps that you take?
For sexual harassment in the workplace, even for domestic violence, law provides that you can actually go, either one, you go by yourself, meet with a lawyer and take steps by yourself. Sexual harassment complaints, of course, you file internally in your workplace because there's the internal complaints committee. And if you don't have an internal complaints committee, you go to the government appointed local complaints committee. You have a lot of NGOs, and especially in a city like Bangalore, that take on the causes of women who have undergone sexual harassment in workplaces, who help you. They basically handhold you and tell you what needs to be done. You also have the Vanita Sahayvani, which is the Commissioner's Office Women's Wing, that gives a lot of advice to women when they're in situations of domestic violence. So they help you navigate. They also help, call the husband and do one round of kind of mediation. Whether it's helpful or not, it's, each case is different. You have protection officers in different places and other NGOs who help you, again, whether you need to file a domestic violence complaint before the magistrate's court, that's a criminal court, you can do it directly through a lawyer's help. So more often than not, if you want to meet with an NGO for help in domestic violence, there are several NGOs actually, which if you go on the internet, you can get information on and take their help before you start off, or you meet with a lawyer, because either ways you're getting advice, either from people and both sets of people know the law and know what needs to be done. So instead of doing it by yourself, feeling lonely and feel like you're walking with your eyes closed, it's always best that you take the help of professionals who can guide you better.
So many women hesitate to seek legal help because they think it's expensive, or due to fear, or because it's intimidating, or it's complicated, time consuming. So is this really true? And if it is, and with terms of finances, is there any free legal aid that's available for women?
It is financially a little bit of a challenge because good lawyers come at a price. There are several lawyers also who are associated with NGOs who do work for almost maybe some of them are free, some charge very less if they're associated with NGOs. But I would say go meet with a lawyer first, because you need to, and then you can assess whether that lawyer is someone whom you can afford. Because there are several lawyers, and lawyers don't have fixed, professional charges. So it depends on what they feel is commensurate to their, their professional guidance and advice. There is a legal services authority that the courts have that give free legal aid, but the aid that you get through those sources may not be the best. So unless you are really someone who is incapable of raising, like coming from very poor background, those are the kind of people who, they for whom financial constraints are a huge problem. They go to and take the help of the legal services authority, which give you legal aid for free. But otherwise, I think people from middle class, lower middle class, or upper middle class, you can certainly find a good lawyer whom you can afford, and talk to the lawyers and get help. Otherwise, meet with NGOs and ask NGOs if they can recommend lawyers whom you can afford. But as I said earlier, getting a good lawyer whom you trust is the first step. So to get a lawyer, using good references and stick with your lawyer thereafter.
Right. Shalini, there are many questions, but we're like well over our time. So I'll wrap up with one final question, saying that what's your final advice if you were to give one to all the women?
Well, I've been in this profession for so long, both as a woman advocate, as well as, having seen people's problems, women's problems. I'll give you the same advice I give all my clients. You're in a time of, humankind where we have a lot more access to help because of the internet, and especially in cities like Bangalore. Please reach out. Don't think that you're by yourself, because believe me, there are so many thousands of women suffering in the same way as you are. You may think that your suffering is very unique to you, but no, it's common to many people. So whatever mental, emotional, financial bar that might be coming in your way to seek help, find out in the way you can. Use your phone, use the internet, get help, get beyond that problem, and ensure that you find out what your rights are. Don't think that if you try and take the step of trying to see what your rights are, people will think you're pushy, you're selfish. Let perceptions of people be the last priority in your life. Because if you need legal help, if you're at that position where you require some kind of protection, or you require some kind of legal advice, completely blank out all the white noise around you. Find your help, because unless you help yourself, you're going to allow people who do wrong to you. You allow the wrong situation in your life to continue. And the longer you continue, it brings you down. If you have children who are dependent on you, you bring them down along with you. So when you know that it's not just you, and there are others who are dependent on you, that becomes a bigger impetus for you to move. But even if you're alone and nobody else is dependent on you, but you're suffering in silence, my advice to you as a lawyer is please don't. Unless there is a physical restraint on you, please ensure that you find out, speak to friends, speak to colleagues, And in that way, if you're educated, read on the internet, find out, get your help. Because there's no need for you to completely you continue, because one, you you continue being a victim, and two, you give strength to the person who's making you the victim.
Right.
And that's the last thing you need to do. And once you get out of your shell, you become, a guide and a light to someone else in the future. Maybe in your own family, maybe to a friend or a colleague. So it just helps. It's like a domino effect. You take that one step, you don't know what you're doing just for yourself, but for so many others. And I've seen it with clients. I've seen girls coming in so reticent, so worried about how they will cope. But the quietest ones are, there's a saying, still waters run deep. I've seen the quietest clients who have fought the most dignified battles, who've come out as complete champions. I mean, people whom I salute. I've seen such incredible women who have come back to me 10 years later, who've sent their friends who've been in similar situations and said, don't sit down, go meet with a lawyer, and become catalysts of change in their friends' lives or their colleagues' lives. So you realize the girl you saw 10 years back, who was so nervous, gotten out of it, gone on with her life, become a much better person, been in a much better place now, earning far better because all those baggages are removed, and has become kind of a light to someone else, which is so incredible to see. And it starts with you saying, no, I will not take it anymore. I will step out.
Mm. That
That's a
would be
really
lovely
powerful
to
message.
hear these stories,
Yeah.
for another time,
Yeah.
which would be like really inspiring for other women. Yeah.
Yes.
Rashmi, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I was like, same. I think that's a really powerful message to end this. I know we're way, way over. We'll definitely get better at, time management, but I know this was a topic that is vast. So we tried to kind of, consolidate everything into it. But there's few questions here, Shalini, that I feel like, might be worth sort of, addressing. I think from the audience, is there a website that that they're able to have access to get basic information like the POSH Act, Vishaka guidelines, and so on?
Just Google. You will get all the information you want. You will get the Vishaka guidelines. Of course, now the Vishaka guidelines have been superseded by the Act.
Yeah.
But download, you get the bare acts if you want to read them. Just go on to NGO websites, search for NGOs which do take these issues, and go to their websites, get their numbers. I think a lot of information is on their websites as well. So, I mean, because I wouldn't be able to promote any one website now, I mean, or NGO, but if all
Right.
information is available on the internet. So you just have to
Well,
put
that
the
makes
right
sense.
person first for that.
I think there's like a comment here about equal pay still being an open issue, in the corporate sector, which I think, definitely exists, right?
I mean, and so
Anyways,
not been even speak about the maternity benefit, because I know it's very common to people, women who have children and have to leave work. But please keep that in mind. We have a Maternity Benefit Act that was amended in 2017, and it's a very beneficial act. You have rights as a mother who's expecting, a mother who's given birth, mother who's adopting children, and now you have surrogacy where you're a commissioning mother. So all of these amendments have happened to the Maternity Benefit Act, so you have rights under that. You need to meet with a lawyer if you're suffering in any form.
when is, the other question here is, when is a good time, for a woman, in India to have a will, like, age?
I don't think there's any age now. After COVID, we've realized anything is possible. So I think no age is too soon. If you have assets and you want to ensure these assets are secured after you are no longer here, meet with a lawyer and make a will. There is no, I mean, firstly, there's no time mandated either by law or by culture. So
Yeah.
just make a will if you think it's necessary, and also to protect your family members. If you have minor children who have no one other than you, if you're a single mother, please make a will. If either because of having lost your spouse or because you're divorced and your child has no one, don't hesitate, make a will. So there's no right age. You know that it's the right age when, you know, practical sense tells you you have to make a will. And don't wait till you're 60 or 50 or whatever.
Yeah. You know, I know there are a couple of them who,
Question on
you know, want to know your contact. What's that?
Charlie, if you could mention the NGOs that you mentioned earlier.
No, the thing is, the problem is I can't give you one or two names. If I can give it to you
Right.
later, you can give it to
Maybe
your
we
audience.
can get back to these questions later, Rashmi.
But yeah, we can, you know, and I think we've covered most of it. I think one of the things that, you know, the audience obviously want to know how they can reach you, you know, Shalini. So would that be okay for us to share your email address?
Yeah, certainly. If they need legal advice, I certainly can give them legal advice. So that would be fine.
Yeah.
Anything
No,
to help.
awesome. You know, I mean, I think it's like I said, way past. So, you know, we'll definitely wrap up here. This was an amazing, you know, first session. Shalini, thank you. To the audience, I just want to mention that you guys will receive a short feedback, you know, via email. Please take a moment and share your thoughts. You know, really what we want to understand is what resonated with you, what could we do better, and you know, what you'd like to explore next. I think those will be really powerful for us to understand. At SIRA, our goal is to really create a space where we can grow together with similar sessions that we're going to have like on a monthly basis, including, you know, like personal like workshops. So if you, again, if you haven't already, we'd love for you to join our private community. So you're in the know-how of everything that's, you know, upcoming. You can stay in touch with us on Instagram or on Facebook. You can go to Flow with SIRA on both the channels. And we, you know, with that said, you know, I would say, please, you know, invite a friend, a sister, a colleague, because we're all able to, you know, come together and grow together and flow together. With that said, heartful thank you, you know, Shalini, for sharing sort of your wisdom, you know, and thank each one of you for showing up and staying on. I know we've gone way past our time. If you know, if anyone, you know, are going through something challenging, please don't like wait. Reach out, you know, talk to a legal expert, ask questions, seek support. I think we've covered a lot of that, you know, today. You know, again, this is just the beginning. So thank you again. Have a great weekend. We'll be in touch.
Thank you for having me as well.
Yeah.
Deep
Thank you,
Rashmi.
Shalini.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.